our live feed via Periscope from the House floor.
Yeah.
So today my remarks are really not as a politician, but just as a mom.
Yes. Most powerful.
The mom in Aurora who sent her child to the movies. The mom who put her child on the bus in Newtown. The mom whose children went to pray in Charleston. The mom in Orlando who sent her child out just for a night, a celebration. Those mothers and the fathers whose hearts have been broken and those whose hearts will be broken because this Congress fails to act. For them, I demand action.
We'd like to defer to our leader, Nancy Pelosi, who would like to share some information with you.
It's not really information, it's a concern, but thank you all.
Microphone doesn't work.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you.
The mic doesn't work, Nancy.
It doesn't work. It just happens. And that's why I am rising. I'm rising to say, Mr. Speaker, turn on this microphone. What is happening on the floor of the House. This is a courtesy that we ask. I have a letter from our former colleague, Gabby Giffords. I don't want to read it to her, her letter, without it being heard, without it being heard by everyone in the gallery, our members, our guests, our press. And so we ask him to turn this on. What would be the reason that the Republican majority in the House is saying, well, we can't remove you physically, or maybe they will, but we're not going to turn on the microphone. Yeah. As a courtesy, in this great democracy, for voices to be heard.
Stifling the voices in the democracy.
Norma, and I apologize.
It's okay. Colleagues, early in my career as a 911 dispatcher, I took a call of an 11-year-old girl. It was an open line on 911. All I could hear were horrible screams and this, followed by 5 shots. 5 shots. As a dispatcher, I counted every single one of them. I knew that I would have to go to court to be her witness to this crime. I had no idea that it was an 11-year-old girl who was going to lose her life simply because her mother was having an affair with a neighbor. That, colleagues, is not a moment of insanity. That is a crime. That is domestic terrorist against a child. I am sick and tired of offending people with mental disabilities by calling racist people homegrown terrorists mentally ill. They are not mentally ill. These are people that are growing up in our community and have access to semi-automatic and fully automatic weapons. They don't deserve to have those weapons. Our military is trained to have those weapons and to use them during a moment of war. Like you, I refuse to be shut down. I will not be shut down, and I will sit here until we have an opportunity to vote on this issue. My constituents deserve better than that. They sent me to Congress to be their voice. So you can shut down the mics if you like. You can stop my constituents from coming here. You can stop the cameras from filming us here. But you are not going to shut us down. Gang of polluters, do your job.
an honor to be here with all you brothers and sisters here, and I want to thank John Lewis in particular for leading us here today. I want to thank John Lewis for leading us here today, and everybody else that was the leaders. And I want to also tell my colleagues on the other side, my Republican friends, and I have many Republican friends, as many of you do, to not harden your hearts. Don't harden your hearts. Listen to the voices. We heard Congressman Payne come up here earlier and said he remembers those little children of Newtown. How many of us don't still remember their voices? They call out for us to do something. I also listened to the debate that the Senate had the other night, and my good friend Senator Kaine was talking about the scar tissue that we have. And I thought of my own situation back in July 18, 1984, in San Ysidro, California, in San Diego. A man goes into a McDonald's. You may recall that. He goes into McDonald's with an Uzi, a 12-gauge shotgun, and a 9mm handgun, and starts firing and killing the people in this McDonald's. And you may remember, and it's even hard for me to remember, a little child that rode up on his bike. He was there to get a treat. Instead, he got a bullet. You can recall how he very softly fell over on his bike and died. The responders that came, the first responders that came and saw that, said how incredibly brutal it was to see all these people die for no reason. And at that point, that was the worst massacre in our history of gun violence. 21 people were killed. We more than doubled it now, and we haven't acted. That's not right. It's just not right. And so I ask my brothers and sisters on the other side, harden not your hearts. Change your mind on this. You know the right thing to do. These weapons have no place in society. They have no place. They're built for one thing, to kill human beings quickly by people that are not trained to use them. So please, come out of the shells wherever you are. Listen to the people. But more importantly, listen to the voices of all those that were killed. Think about them. Think about their parents. Think about the families that have been suffering this whole time, and have the courage to come out and take a vote. Thank you.
Amen. Right, Paco.
And you're watching live video via Periscope from the House floor, where Democrats for nearly 4 hours now have been holding a sit-in over the issue of gun legislation. That video, that Periscope, is coming from Scott Peters, congressman from California, two-term congressman from California. The House is in recess, subject to the call of the chair. Not sure when they're going to gavel back in. We have video back up again from Periscope. Let's go back to the House.
Look at the state of Vermont.
And it froze up again. We apologize about that. It's been a busy day on Capitol Hill in addition to this sit-in by Democrats on Capitol Hill. Hillary Clinton earlier today met with House Democrats and has since moved on to a speech on the campaign trail. She tweeted about today's activities by the House. This is what real leadership looks like, and she includes a picture from the floor as the sit-in was getting underway with Congressman John Lewis and others. Looks like our video is okay. Back to more coverage.
Hold of these weapons and sit back and do absolutely nothing. We ought to be able to work together as a Congress and pass no fly, no buy. That should be easy. That should be simple. We don't want bad guys and terrorists having guns in this country. It shouldn't be up for debate. We ought to be able to come together and do this for the American people and stop hiding behind special interest groups and do the right thing. The time is now to do something about the gun violence and the bad people that are getting a hold of them. Thank you.
My brothers and sisters,
Thanks, Johnson, Georgia.
How happy I am to be a member of Congress today. I never thought that I would be sitting around on the floor of the House, literally. And I never thought that I would be sitting on the floor of the House with John Lewis in protest of the lack of action by this body. And nor did I ever think that we would be joined by our esteemed colleagues from the other side of the you all have joined us today. It heartens us. It stiffens our resolve for what we face. And I want to share this with you. I just got this text from one of my staffers who is at a hearing that is supposed to be taking place right now. I'm supposed to be there, and I assume others of us are supposed to be in that hearing and in other hearings as well. But this staffer just texted me and said that he overheard a Republican, one of our colleagues, saying to his colleague, another Republican, that, quote, if we give in on this, there will be a lot more problems. So they are looking at this as if it's some kind of a game.
Yep.
They think that this is some kind of a ploy. They don't understand that this is a spontaneous development, unforeseen. They don't understand that when John Lewis decided to sit down, that 1, 2, and 3 more would join him. They never thought that they would see this many of us on the House floor. They never thought that we would be here for this long. They thought it would be over with in just a couple of minutes. But instead, it's been several hours that this has continued. And what it's doing, as we continue to do this, we're getting stronger. Don't y'all feel it? Yeah. As we listen to each other, as we listen to the pleas of our colleagues about the need to take action, each and every one of us is thinking about what's in the hearts and minds of our constituents.
Well, that Periscope video froze up once again. This is video that we're getting from Scott Peters, Congressman from California. We understand from our producers that some 3,800 people watching it via Periscope, and how many thousands or millions watching it via C-SPAN. So we are at the mercy of technology here with the Periscope feed. We'll show you as much as we can as the video comes back. I did want to update you on the schedule. Craig Kaplan, our Capitol Hill producer, tweets this out, saying that the House floor schedule update. They got this from leadership. Members are advised the House does expect to vote today, the timing of which is currently to be determined. The pending business for the House today was set to have been the financial services bill for fiscal year 2017, but they didn't even get into debate. The session lasted all of 3 or 4 minutes before they gavelled it out as the sit-in continues. And Congressman Hank Johnson, last we saw, was speaking on the floor, but we're still having some issue with that video feed. A couple of other things on Capitol Hill. We mentioned Hillary Clinton spoke to Democrats earlier. Also today, the House Judiciary Committee was considering a possible impeachment motion against the IRS commissioner. A tweet here from Susan Ferriccio of the Washington Examiner saying, meanwhile, the House Freedom Caucus sends out news. The Freedom Caucus calls for an impeachment of the IRS commissioner. And we showed you the Hillary Clinton tweet earlier. Looks like our video may be coming back, maybe a moment or two. Let's see if we can get some calls and your comments on today's activities in the House. Here's in Southern California, Maggie on our Democrats line. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi, Maggie.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. I'm watching right now at home I'm only 16 years old. I'm not even legally allowed to vote. But I just wanted to say that I'm very glad that this is on air right now, that people are periscoping this, because it's really shocking what the Republicans are doing right now. And it's so scary for me to grow up in a society where this has become accepted. You know, I remember when the first shooting I can remember was Gabby Giffords. You know, I don't know what year that was, 2007 maybe, 2009 or 10. And it never stopped after that. It was constant. You would hear about gun violence on the news. And I hope that something is done from this, because it's scary and it's really not good. You know, I can't stress how just appalling and disgusting it is what the Republicans are doing right now. And I stand with all the Democrats, and I hope something gets done because of this, something basic. You know, we need to think bigger, but the Republicans won't budge, so we need to do something small right now. And something small, I think, is enough, and we need to keep going.
You may have seen Democratic Leader Pelosi. Thanks, Maggie. Democratic Leader Pelosi on the floor. She was going to read, she called on the speaker to turn on the microphone so that she could read a letter from Gabby Giffords, and I think that shooting was in 2012. I may be wrong on that. Sue, coverage is all dependent on the House providing us a video feed. We have been able to show you video via Periscope, and I think we can take you there live. Scott Peters. Looks like this is a Facebook feed, some of the Facebook live video. Let's go there now.
Who made any murmur about the killings that goes on in this nation? Well, I got a message for the Republicans.
Yeah.
Speaker Ryan, you can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah.
Republicans, you can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah, but you can't hide.
There's no hiding place.
Yes.
That will keep you from doing the right thing about the murders and the crime and the killings that goes on in our nation today. I want you to know that just this past weekend, in my city of Chicago,
make it plain,
the city that I love, the city that means so much to this nation, that's given so much to this nation. Just this past weekend, 26 Chicagoans shot in one weekend. 46. 13 killed over Father's Day weekend. Enough is enough.
Is enough.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Come on.
You can run, but you can't hide. Just this year alone, in Chicago, Illinois, over 1,800 people shot just in the year 2016. Over 200 American citizens killed just this year, all by guns, all by guns. And we have a Republican-controlled House of Representatives, a Republican-controlled Senate, and their silence is deafening, and their silence is deafening. Too many people are dying on on the streets of America, and we're sitting around the Republicans like gnats on a log. Hear no evil, see no evil, they ain't doing a doggone thing about the gun carnage in our nation. Let me say to those who are sitting here, those who are in the chamber today, you are doing a marvelous work. America is proud of you.
Scott Walker's head about calling this a city.
One of my favorite scriptures.
Because of the people that and the war
It's in the New
that
Testament,
actually,
Old Testament rather.
died and were hit and things like that.
God asked the prophet Micah, what do I require of you, O man? But to love mercy, to do justice, and to walk humbly with your God. Not seek justice, not pray for justice, not wish for justice, but to do justice. You are doing justice when you are sitting down the victims, the folks who are afraid for their very lives, afraid to step outside of their door, afraid to go to churches, to go to work, to go to school. You are doing justice for them. When you're sitting down, we're allowing families in America to stand up. Stand up. Stand up.
Stand up.
Thank you so very much.
Go Bill! 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 We're staying. No break. Thank you, Barbara. We're also joined by Gary Peters, the great senator from this week. Thank you. I want to again acknowledge the primogenitors of this whole movement. This is spontaneous and organic, but it started with our own Catherine Clark. Join ours with John Lewis. We got to get in the way. Someone who's been getting in the way of the Republican National Committee is someone from this House of Representatives, our own Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Tell Debbie.
You know, if the Republican cowards that run this chamber would actually turn the microphones on, then we could all be heard a little bit louder. But I am proud today to give voice once again to one of our own. 4.5 years ago, I stood at this very same podium on January 25th, 2012, and read a very different letter from our friend and former colleague, Gabby Giffords. That was her letter of resignation. The letter that she proffered as a result of becoming a victim of senseless, brutal gun violence, in which 6 others lost their lives, including a 9-year-old little girl and a federal judge, and 13 were wounded, including our own former colleague, Ron Barber. Gabby and her husband, Mark, since then, have valiantly stood up and given voice to so many, to thousands of victims of gun violence, thousands who have died. And today I am proud to give her voice once again. Dear member of the House and former colleagues, there is nowhere I would rather be right now than with you, on the floor of the People's House, representing Southern Arizona, fighting for our country and working to make our communities safer. But your actions is the balm for my regret.
Look up, sir.
And it is the inspiration for my continued commitment. Fighting gun violence takes great courage. I've seen great courage when my life was on the line. I see great courage in many of you right now. Americans are grappling with a gun violence crisis. It is a crisis that tears apart the lives of so many Americans and touches every community. It is both public and private, in our homes and on our streets, at work, at church, at the movies, at a dance club, at school, and at school again, at a Congress on your corner. The victims are young and old, but always with so much life ahead of them. They are white and black, Latino and Asian, and Native American. They are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, queer and straight. They are Christian and Muslim, Jewish and Sikh. They are veterans and government workers and union members. They are rich and poor. They die by murder, they die by suicide, and they die by negligence. Often, they don't die, but they carry the scars, and their lives change forever. If gun violence affects all of us Americans, then the solution is not up to just some of us. We are all responsible for our safety today and for the country we pass on to our children tomorrow. It's what makes us a country, where our country has already come together behind the simple proposition that we ought to have laws that keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. So must our Congress. And they should not waste another minute. We must not accept the world that will be the product of inaction in Washington. We can do better. Some states have already made progress. They show us that when we put aside our incidental or momentary differences and stand shoulder to shoulder, we have enormous power. It's been said that hope was forged of two powerful ingredients: anger at how things are and the courage to change them. We will not be driven backwards to live in isolation from one another and in fear of violence. Thanks to you and millions of Americans who share our values of pluralism, liberty, and responsibility, we will stand strong and work toward a safer nation for all of us. Speaking is difficult for me, but I haven't been silenced. And neither should the American people. Their representatives must vote to prevent gun violence. I'm so proud of our friend today, and so proud to stand with all of you. And we will be here and sit in and stand strong until we can make sure there are no more Gabbys, no more Orlando, no more Aurora, no more victims. Thank you so much.
From the state of Wisconsin, a member of the 106th Congress, Tammy Baldwin.
Second greatest.
Peter DeFazio.
An apple or the charger from Kilmer. Thank you.
So if anybody is just tuning in with our makeshift broadcast here today, the speaker having shut off the microphones and the cameras, he did grace us with lights. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Don't call me makeshift. A little better than makeshift. Better than makeshift.
They might have to shut down the whole building. That would be disruptive. But if people are just tuning in, they might wonder, what are these dangerous, radical, revolutionary, scary proposals that the Democrats want to foist on the American people now? What are they? They must be horrible if the speaker's going to these lengths. Universal background checks before you can buy a gun. Today we have loopholes big enough to deliver truckloads of guns to people who are currently legally prohibited from buying guns, but they don't have to undergo background checks, and they can buy them and then take them out and commit crimes and massacres and other things. Is that a radical proposal, my friends? All right, no one disagrees. Unanimous consent. It's passed. Now, there is one that, I can understand the Republicans really have trouble with this. If you are on the terrorist watch list, you can't walk into a gun store and legally buy a gun. Really, Mr. Speaker, you're holding up a vote on a bill that would say that people on the terrorist watch list, a potential clear and present danger to the citizens of the United States of America, should be able to legally buy guns? Really, Mr. Speaker? Let us vote.
No bill! No bill! No bill! No bill! No bill! No bill!
John Sarbanes.
Get John,
First of all, God bless Gabby Giffords, my classmate. We came here together. Gabby, we won't let you down. God bless Catherine Clark and John Lewis and Bobby Rush, and God bless all of you. But most importantly, God bless the families in Orlando, the families in Aurora, families of Sandy Hook, the families of all these tragedies across the country. God bless them for their grief, for their perseverance, for their hope that we will do something here. Colleagues, they call this the people's house.
Right.
And yet it's been a long time since the voice of the people has been heard in this place. The NRA has a voice here. The gun manufacturers have a voice in this place, but for some reason that the Republicans can't explain, the voice of the people is locked out and left behind. This microphone doesn't belong.
Looks like the video froze up for a moment there. John Sarbanes of Maryland speaking to his fellow members on the House floor. Video looks good now. Live coverage continues on C-SPAN.
The gun manufacturers, this microphone that they've cut off belongs to the American people. This is their microphone. This is their microphone. All we are trying to do, Mr. Speaker, is get a vote.
That's all.
That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to do our job. And the only job that you have, really, is to bring a vote to the floor. That's your job as Speaker of this institution, is to bring to the floor the matters that the American people want to have addressed by our vote, by their representatives. That's your job, to bring a vote to this floor. Too many people in this country are grieving. And many Americans are hungry for just some common sense measures. Just the simplest things that show that we haven't lost our minds, to show that we still have some sanity in this country. That's all Americans are asking for. That's what they're hungry for. You know, I can hear Dr. King's words.
Yes.
He once said, "Somewhere I hear the God of the universe saying, I was hungry and you fed me not." There are people in this country who are hungry for common sense measures to address their grieving and their pain. Is that going to be the legacy of Paul Ryan? That a grieving mother in Sandy Hook
will say I was hungry and you fed me not. That a parent in Atlanta who is heartbroken today will say I was hungry and you fed me not. All we are asking is for a vote. 85–90% of Americans know that we need to have universal background checks. Yeah. They know that if you're too dangerous to fly on an airplane, you're too dangerous to have a gun. 90% of Americans want to see us take that vote. Let us have the vote. And don't send us home without giving us that opportunity. Don't send us home without giving us the opportunity to say to these families that are grieving, that are heartbroken, that we hear them, that we understand them, that we feel their pain, and that we want to do something about it. Don't send us home without giving us that opportunity. No bill, no break.
No bill! No break! No bill! No break! No bill! No break! No bill! No break! No bill! No break!
Amongst our Senate colleagues who have joined us, we're proud to welcome again another former member of this body, Gary Peters. Great senator from the state of Virginia by way of Rockville, Connecticut. Mark Warner, who's here with us. And our great leader, Steve Israel.
Hey.
By way of New York.
My colleagues, about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, many of us stood on the steps of this Capitol with Leader Pelosi. And we stood with Bobby Rush, we stood with other members of this body, and we stood with families of those who've been killed to gun violence. And I was thinking about the first time I stood on the steps of the Capitol. I'm ending my career here. And so I couldn't help but think about the first time I stood on the steps of the Capitol. It was the night of 9/11.
Oh, yeah.
I represent a district that lost 200 people that day. 200 people that day. Every life precious. Kathleen Rice is with us. She lost constituents that day. Joe Crowley lost his cousin that day. And we were on the steps as the sun set over Washington, Democrats and Republicans, literally holding hands, pledging ourselves to do what needed to be done to protect the lives of the American people. And we did it. We deployed resources and assets. We created the Department of Homeland Security. We sent young men and women into battle in Afghanistan. The Bush administration sent them into Iraq. And whether you agree or disagree with some of those decisions, we stood on those steps and agreed that our fundamental job was to protect the lives of our constituents. And when tens of thousands of Americans have been slaughtered, murdered to gun violence, what does the Republican leadership tell us to do? Stand for a moment of silence. It ain't working, Mr. Speaker. It ain't working. We're tired of silence. We want action. Now, I was just outside the chamber, as many of my colleagues have been before coming back, and reporters are saying, well, why are you doing this? What's the point? What's the point? The point is 20 children in Sandy Hook who lost their lives. People of San Bernardino, in Aurora. But let me give you 300, I won't do all 344 points, but let me give you 344 additional points to what we're doing. Since Orlando, 344 Americans have been killed to guns. 344 since that tragedy. Where's the moment of silence, Mr. Speaker, for Victor Robinson of Des Moines, Iowa? What about the moment of silence, Mr. Speaker, for Ashley Spence and Cameron Mounds, Jr. of Hartford, Connecticut? Where's the moment of silence for Brady Coleman of San Antonio, Corey Gordon of Tampa, Wayne Jerome Daly of Washington, D.C., Mary Jean McBroom of Shreveport, Louisiana, Curtis Mitchell of San Bernardino, California? Where are those moments of silence, Mr. Speaker? They deserve to be recognized as well. Every life is precious. The lives of those in my district that were lost on 9/11 and the hundreds of thousands of lives who've been lost since then. Mr. Speaker, give us this vote. Give us this vote. No bill, no break.
No bill! No break! No bill! No break! No bill! No break! No bill! No break!
Joaquin Castro. While Joaquin is coming up, we want to remind everybody as well that even though the cameras have been turned off, many of Americans keep coming into our balconies to witness democracy in action, to witness the members of the House of Representatives doing what we elected to do, cast the vote in the spirit of John Lewis. We are getting in the way until we get a vote. Joaquin.
In the early 1990s, around the time that I graduated from high school, my hometown was the drive-by capital of Texas. That year, there were 1,262 drive-by shootings in San Antonio, more than Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin combined. Earlier this month, in San Antonio, there was a 5-year-old girl who was killed while she was sleeping because of a stray bullet. On Father's Day, there was a 40-year-old man who had a son who was killed because of a road rage incident. We understand, and these are folks who respect the Second Amendment. Many of us over the years, if we think about protecting our families, we've imagined somebody breaking into our homes at 2 or 3 in the morning and perhaps thought about buying a gun. And many people have for self-defense. In rural areas, people who live 20 or 30 minutes or more from law enforcement often buy guns for self-protection. And in places like Texas, many people buy guns for sport. The legislation that we support and we're proposing respects those rights, respects the Second Amendment. But we don't understand how Republicans will continue to allow terrorists to buy guns. We don't understand why we can't have background checks on people who seek to own AR-15s that can kill dozens of people in a few seconds. You know, in the House of Representatives, we deal with issues concerning people all over the world. Recently, we've discussed and had hearings on things like Brexit, Britain exiting the European Union, on the president's trip to Vietnam today. Last week, we voted on infrastructure on Afghanistan. And yet, the Republican leadership can't hold a single hearing or a single vote on an issue of gun violence where 32,000 people a year in the United States of America, the people that we represent, our country, 32,000 people killed, and they can't hold a single vote. Instead, when one of these mass shootings happens, all we get are moments of silence. Silence is not a solution. This demands more. And we ask that they do something that is fundamental to democracy. You know, as human beings, whatever our job is, there are times when our jobs become uncomfortable. If you're a small business owner and you have to let go of an employee, that's an uncomfortable conversation. If you're an employee who's going to quit your job for another opportunity, that's an uncomfortable conversation. If you're a parent with an adolescent child and you have to talk to him about the birds and the bees, that's a very uncomfortable conversation. But that's what you signed up for. If you are here representing Americans in Congress, you signed up to take tough votes. And if you believe that terrorists should be able to own guns, then put your name to that vote. If you believe that we shouldn't have background checks, then put your name to that vote. Vote. Take a vote.
Take a vote.
Take a vote. Take a vote.
Members of this chamber to rise and give a special thanks to all the members of the United States Senate who have been here today and their leader who now joins us.
Once again, our video froze up. We are bringing you Facebook video provided by Congressman Beto O'Rourke.